In its end, Moon Knight. Mark Spector is better known as the vigilante Moon Knight. Once a mercenary, Mark Spector was left for dead in the desert, where he was revived by the moon god Khonshu. Appointed Khonshu's first and high priest, Moon Knight enacts justice to protect those who travel at night. Spectre also suffers from dissociative identity disorder, which has paved the way for his use of other identities, including millionaire Stephen Grant, and cab driver Jake Lockley. Since the early days, Mark has mostly worked alone, but he's also been a member of a few superhero teams, including the Avengers and Heroes for Hire. Recently, Mark discovered that he had a daughter named Beatrice with his longtime lover Marlene Arlone. But when Khonshu sensed Mephisto's plans for world domination, Mark left her to fight by his god's side and prevent that from coming true. When Khonshu succumbed to madness, however, Mark had to turn against him and help the Avengers defeat him. However, whenever Moon Knight would end up dying, Khonshu would just bring him back to life. So yeah, in essence, he's immortal. In at 9, Elongated Man. As his name suggests, the elongated man can stretch his limbs and body to superhuman lengths and sizes. There seems to be no limit to how far or wide he can stretch, but it's more difficult to control this ability the further he's actually stretched out. However, this also allows him to absorb bullets and then even just shoot them back by tightening his skin. He can also contort his body into various positions and sizes impossible for ordinary humans, such as being entirely flat so that he can slip under a door, or using his fingers to pick conventional locks. He can also use it for a disguise by changing the shape of his face, although this is painful and difficult for him. But being able to stretch and move your body at will could also potentially allow you to stretch your life for longer than it should be. I mean, like, if his heart is giving out, theoretically, Ralph can just like force his heart to keep pumping by literally doing it himself, right? He can like shrink his heart and make it pump, right? So like it is partially possible, or at least there is a slight chance that he could be immortal, which is after all what this list is all about. It's might be immortal, right? In at 8, Ghost Rider. Jonathan Johnny Blaze, aka Ghost Rider, is an American motorcycle stunt performer and entertainer turned spirit of vengeance. He was the son of famed stuntman Barton Blaze, who tragically died during a stunt. He became bound to Zarthos and the spirit of vengeance after making a deal with the demon Mephisto to spare the life of his surrogate father, Crash Simpson. Now, with the power to control hellfire and to inflict pain on those deemed evil with his penance stare, Blaze seeks vengeance, riding his hell cycle as the Ghost Rider. But like, being the spirit of vengeance, being in debt to Mephisto kinda makes you pretty immortal in my book. Like, in human form, Johnny has no possession of any superhuman powers or supernatural capabilities, but as Ghost Rider, he's the supernatural combination between experienced motorcyclist and Zarthos. As the Ghost Rider, Johnny Blaze possesses a variety of supernatural powers at his disposal. However, any weapon crafted from heaven or like blessed can mutilate the Ghost Rider, which is the only way to decapitate and kill a spirit of vengeance. So without that, he's immortal.
Number 7, Shazam. While Billy Batson can and does age in the comics, Shazam does not. Shazam is the superhero form that Billy transforms into whenever he speaks the magical word Shazam. In this form, he gains the powers of the gods, the wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Hercules, the endurance of Atlas, the power of Zeus, the bravery of Achilles, and finally, the speed of Mercury. Being that in this state, Billy is basically a god himself, it would make sense that this form of him is also immortal. Number 6, Phantom Stranger. The Phantom Stranger has a very mysterious background. No one really knows his exact origins, though he is often presented as a neutral party who was caught between the two sides in the war between heaven and hell, and as such was forced to roam the earth alone for all of eternity. He usually only makes an appearance when he is really needed, and is considered to be on the same power level as someone like the Spectre, who is known as an immensely powerful hero and cosmic entity. In terms of his psychic abilities, he has an omnipotent level of knowledge, can fly and teleport, and can sense threats that are often considered undetectable, as well as create illusions. And of course, the Phantom Stranger is also believed to be immortal, having roamed the universe for a millennium. At least that is true as far as the New Earth continuity version of the character goes. The New 52 version of the Phantom Stranger is not as mysterious or seemingly as powerful as his former self, sadly, but is still most likely immortal, considering how old he too is believed to be, based on the fact that we are actually given an identity for him. So he's supposed to be, I think, Judas. So I don't know if that's spoilers, but I'm pretty sure that was revealed like years ago, so I don't think it's super spoilery. Number 5, Supergirl. Like her cousin Kal-El, Supergirl is often perceived as being basically immortal. In Future State, we saw an alternate future where Kara left Earth and lived well into the future. And that's not the only alternate reality where we've seen Kryptonians living well into the future. virtually untouched by age. There have been countless other realities, including that of DC 1 million, where we've seen heroes like Superman live well beyond normal years, becoming basically a sun-powered god. So if this is true for Clark, based on his physiology, you'd think it would also be a possibility for Kara as well, considering that both of them have about the same Kryptonian physiology. I mean, Superman is male and Supergirl is female, and that's about where their differences should end though, I imagine. Also, if they're like humans, I mean, females tend to live longer than males, so she might even be more immortal. Number 4, Dream. The Dream we know via the Netflix Sandman series and the comic it is based off of is known by the name of Morpheus, but he is not the only iteration of the character to exist. Currently, in the Sandman universe, there is another who is Dream. This is a different incarnation of the character though. While Dream can be killed and defeated, the concept of Dream cannot. And so if ever Dream does fall, there will be a new incarnation that will appear to take his place. That's honestly true immortality. The reason why I'm ranking Dream a little lower though is because he's not your typical hero. In fact, some may not even consider him to be one at all, and may in the comments already be arguing with me about this point. But I would argue that in his way, along his journey in the comics, Dream does ultimately become a hero. A reluctant one, but he does. Lord Morpheus is often not thought of as being one of the most powerful members of the Endless, as he is the ruler of the non-tangible realm of dreams and nightmares. But that being said, his brother Destruction did once imply that the two sides of the coin that make up Dream are both the concepts of the surreal, fantasy worlds of dreams and reality itself. Like how destruction represents both destruction and creation, and death embodies both death and life, as one cannot exist without the other to help shape and define it. Number 3, Superman. One of the most powerful heroes out there is Superman, who has been established as immortal as long as he's under a yellow sun. So his immortality is a little bit conditional, which is why I'm ranking him a touch lower here. But when it comes to him being a powerhouse, Superman is undisputably one of the best heroes that we have. I mean, DC kind of had to cement his powers and give him weaknesses to make his struggles more grounded. That's how unstoppable he was initially. We had to give him weaknesses. He didn't have enough. Back when his superpowers were basically whatever he needed them to be in order to save the day and overcome the challenges that he faced. It was like, what does Superman need for this adventure? He's got that power. Number 2, Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman is a superhero that, yes, can be killed, but she has also been known as a demigod in the comics before, with one origin for the character establishing her as the daughter of Hippolyta, the queen of the Amazons, and Zeus, a god of Olympus. This feels pretty sacrilegious to me given the histories of the Amazons as explained in DC Black Label's Historia, but I digress. During the events of Dark Knight's death metal, Diana was also raised up to become an omnipotent god amidst the stars, transcending into an otherworldly being and leaving our earthly plane behind, at least for a little while. Diana would also, during this time, get a glimpse into a potential future that we'd come to know as Future State, although ultimately this future would not come to pass, at least not exactly. Wonder Woman is known for being one of the fiercest and strongest fighters amongst the Amazons and in the world of DC, and part of that is thanks to her connection to the gods and her immortality as a result. Wonder Woman is known for being one of the fiercest and strongest fighters amongst the Amazons and in the world of DC, and part of that is thanks to her connection to the gods and her immortality as a result. Number 1, Immortal Man. I mean, it's literally in the name, right? We have to include Klarn here. Honestly, I started out this list really having to rack my brain for some immortal heroes that I wanted to include. But now that I'm nearing the end of the list, I'm finding there are actually so many I could have included that I didn't, and I'm questioning all my choices, but at least I got this one. Hopefully we get a part 2, that's all I'm saying. I'm glad I didn't overlook Immortal Man though, and I decided to include him here at least. Immortal Man is the rival of one of the most famous immortal villains from DC Comics, Vandal Savage. In fact, Klarn Arg, as he is known, is actually from the same prehistoric era as Vandal in the New Earth continuity. Immortal Man isn't immortal in the same way as some other heroes listed here. Instead of having an immortal body and mind, he simply has an immortal spirit, being reincarnated each time his physical body perishes, allowing him to pursue and combat against Vandal Savage throughout the ages.
At number 10, we have Annihilus. Using the cosmic control rod, Annihilus ameliorates his own well-being, spending most of his time trying to find ways to make himself, yes, immortal. The rod is known to have almost limitless capabilities, so his efforts aren't in vain. as he has found ways to fend off disease, slowing down cellular degeneration, otherwise known as aging, and warding off heat and cold. He also uses it to fly super fast, which is another plus. The only reason why Annihilus is back at number 10 for me is that he seems to need the cosmic control rod to achieve immortality. And even while he has it, he's known to be liable to make big mistakes due to his paranoia that others are going to try and snatch it from him. Remember kids, the real superpower is up here. Number 9 goes to Apocalypse. This villain, often facing off against the X-Men, originated in ancient Egypt, giving hints that he's capable of existing for hundreds of years at a time without meeting death. Yeah, so he's also known to have supreme control over his body from an atomic level, being capable of growing in size and density whenever he chooses, and adapting to his environment and fighting off disease. Not only that, but he's immune to aging again. So when Apocalypse was finally defeated by Cable, he wasn't actually killed and regenerated in a tomb in Aqaba. So there you have it. It seems like this guy will always be around. Our best bet is to keep him at bay for a while before he inevitably comes back, possibly repeating this process for eternity. Alright, at number 8 we have Mephisto, a demon creature who presents similarly to how humans view Satan. And yes, he did this to manipulate our singular views of evil through our tale of Satan the fallen angel. Regardless, Mephisto is known to be so powerful that he does not need food or water, or even oxygen to survive. He even has abilities to regenerate in the instances that he is damaged, going as far as regrowing limbs. And he can also see his own future if he so chooses. So even if something was coming his way that could somehow usurp his seemingly immortal powers, he would see it coming and put a stop to it before it could reach him. Mephisto proves to be a threat throughout the ages, and although he does face certain limitations to his powers and influence, this list isn't about power, but about immortality. So there you go.
Number 7, Ra's al Ghul. Ra's al Ghul was born around 700 years ago, and thanks to the Lazarus Pits, he has been able to keep his body in working order. So he isn't actually immortal, but he has gained a sort of pseudo-immortality from the Lazarus Pits. After he came into contact with the Pits, he eventually became a master martial artist and a master fencer. He gained a massive amount of wealth and started creating organizations to rid the world of crime, first being called the Demon, which the later League of Assassins is a branch of. Ra's is an eco-terrorist, and his purpose with the League of Assassins is to eliminate all evil in the world by destroying all of humanity and just starting all over again. Obviously, that mentality means he routinely has run-ins with the superhero community, especially Batman, whom he helped train. Ra's has had many plans over the years that tried to destroy the world, and he has also beaten the entire JLA when he discovered Batman's notes on them. With his years of experience and his vast amount of accumulated resources, this older fellow is a massive threat to both the heroes and the entire world. Number 6, Doomsday. Doomsday is essentially just pure destruction. He was able to bring down the Justice League and take the life of Earth's premier hero, Superman, in his first ever appearance. Doomsday doesn't speak, he can't be reasoned with, and the only way to stop him is to beat him harder than he will beat you. That's because Doomsday was created on the planet Krypton as the ultimate life form, tested against that planet's harsh environment and eventually against the Kryptonians themselves. Doomsday's whole life cycle involves it losing its life and then coming back stronger than whatever took it out in the first place. Over decades, that involved literal thousands of deaths, and Doomsday essentially became a nearly undefeatable monster with no other thought process beyond destroying everything in front of him and moving on. All he does is punch things to pieces, and the only way to stop him is to try and punch him to pieces however you can and as quickly as you can before he does too much damage. And no matter what you do, he will come back even stronger. He's even fought his way out of hell itself. Number 5, Darkseid. In the New 52, Uxas, who would become Darkseid, whispers doubt into the ears of the gods, sending them into war with each other, which is when he takes them all out and steals their power, making himself the first of the new gods. He has immeasurable strength. He's immortal, obviously, nearly invulnerable for surviving an explosion that could destroy existence itself. He wields the cosmic Omega effect using Omega beams to seriously hurt people like Superman and even the Spectre. He can remove people from existence, and using the Omega Sentient can trap people in an endless loop of increasingly horrible lives. Telepathically strong enough to control the population of a planet, he can use telekinesis, teleport, control the time stream, and manipulate matter. He's super smart, has advanced technology, and rules Apocalypse and his army of parademons, but almost everything he does is through avatars that he creates because he is the embodiment of evil. He can do anything he wants to and can never truly be defeated except for in his true form, which is nearly undefeatable. Number 4, Mr. Mind. I think anyone who hasn't heard of this villain before would be kind of forgiven. When you think of the most fearsome villains, specifically the villains of Captain Marvel, otherwise known as Shazam, you may not first think about the 7-inch long sentient worm from Venus known as Mr. Mind. This diabolically evil, mind-controlling worm, after the events of Infinite Crisis, would cocoon himself and then emerge as a massive monstrosity capable of manipulating reality, consuming universes, and traveling through time and space. He was described as, quote, eating years and events from the universe's history, altering the Earth with every flap of his massive wings. It took a combined effort from Booster Gold, Supernova, and Skeets to defeat Mr. Mind by trapping him inside Skeets' shell, which was fortified by the Suspendium. Then Booster Gold threw Skeets through time with the help of Supernova to the day that Mr. Miracle was first discovered on Earth by Dr. Sivana, and then he is trapped in a time loop forever. So they didn't actually end him, they just trapped him in a time loop. This all-powerful, mind-controlling, 7-inch long worm. Number 3, the Anti-Monitor. The Anti-Monitor's story actually begins billions of years ago with the creation of the multiverse. When a scientist named Krona, a guardian of the universe on the Green Lantern world of Oa, tries to use a device that would allow him to witness creation itself, a massive explosion occurs which actually alters the creation of the universe, giving birth to the multiverse. Among the countless alternate realities created in this incident was the antimatter universe, the birthplace of the Anti-Monitor. The Anti-Monitor embodies evil and seeks to conquer all of existence, while his brother, the Monitor, embodies goodness and watches over life. But that was changed in the New 52 and then again in DC Rebirth. And I gotta tell you what this character can actually do. The Anti-Monitor is a being of extraordinary power who feeds on the energies of destroyed universes. These energies further increase his power, allowing him to manipulate reality and even travel through time. He can also unleash his energy as bolts or shockwaves to attack his opponents. In addition, the Anti-Monitor possesses incredible strength, stamina, and durability, and can even grow to be hundreds of meters tall. He also has an army of shadow demons from the antimatter universe at his command. However, the extent of the Anti-Monitor's power is dependent on his energy levels, which can be drained in order to weaken him. Still, only another cosmic being like the Monitor or the Spectre is capable of opposing the Anti-Monitor at full power, and even they needed help from some of DC's top heroes to put him down for good. Number 2, Mr. Zed. Now, I'd be lying if I said the concept for Mr. Zed wasn't at least somewhat cool. His whole shtick is being immortal and traveling through time to trap famous people throughout history in the crystal that sits on top of his walking cane. Superman, being one of the most popular and important heroes, obviously meant there was going to be at least an attempt to get him inside that crystal. Unfortunately for Mr. Z, Superman's Kryptonian heritage just means that he's invulnerable to the crystal. Not only invulnerable to it, but he even overloads the crystal, destroying it and releasing all those trapped inside. Kinda makes you wonder why DC started struggling to make Superman stories actually interesting. As for Mr. Z, he would face Superman once back in 1943 and again when the pair got stranded on an island and Superman got rescued, but Mr. Z was literally left out there to starve forever. Number 1, Mr. Mxyzptlk. Mr. Mxyzptlk is a reality warping imp obsessed with Superman who, just like his rival Batmite did with Batman, simply seeks to annoy the heck out of Superman and just prove he is smarter than him. Which is good, because he has a level of power that in other hands could cause the end of the entire multiverse. He can do almost anything imaginable if he wishes, and his only weakness really is being convinced or tricked into saying his own name backwards to send him back to the 5th dimension, which if you're trying to say it correctly is honestly a superpower in and of itself. Mxyzptlk is able to use magic to survive most attacks, he can regenerate and heal himself instantly, and has high tolerance to pain, making him basically impossible to defeat. Coming in at number 10 today is Ultron. How can you really pass away if you were never technically alive to begin with? Over time, Ultron has definitely taken on more squishy bodies, like when he became half Hank Pym, but for the most part, Ultron as a villain has been pretty much entirely unkillable, if you could even describe him that way. A large part of this has to do with his program transmitter. Located in his head cavity, the program transmitter can project Ultron's entire 3.2 terabyte memory and personality system into some computer systems. He can beam part or all of his programming into remote locations, such as computers or alternate robotic bodies, and has used this ability to create and control entire armies of himself, to move himself into other bodies if he's destroyed, and he's even used it to implant directives into his own creations to rebuild Ultron if he is ever actually destroyed. But that alone is a pretty hard thing enough to do, because normally Ultron's outer shell is made entirely of adamantium, one of the strongest metals in the entire Marvel universe. On top of that though, Ultron is almost always improving himself, upgrading his body, programming, and abilities, while also spreading his influence further and deeper into the cosmos. Number 9. The One Below All. The One Below All is a relatively recent addition to the comics, but the idea of the entity isn't, as we have known about the One Above All for a while, and his mere existence begs the question of who inhabits the opposite side of the spectrum. Thanks to the Immortal Hulk storyline, we now know it is utterly terrifying. He resides in the below place, and his power has been manifesting itself for decades in the form of gamma mutates like the Hulk. In the story, we do get brief glimpses of what could actually happen if the embodiment of destruction and nothingness were to be set loose on the multiverse. Basically, the One Below All completely takes over the body of the Immortal Hulk, and using this body, he brings an end to the current version of the multiverse, destroying literally everything and everyone over billions of years, including the very essence of life and the multiverse itself. So that when the multiverse is rebirthed into its new version, it is the last time it can truly even happen. With the Hulk / One Below All / Breaker of Worlds consuming everything to grow to a massive planetary scale, wiping out all of existence. But thanks to some time/reality traveling bugs, this does not come to pass, but it could, and that's all you need to know. Number 8. Apocalypse. If it wasn't for his goal of mutant domination and evolution, Apocalypse would vaporize the X-Men whenever he wanted to, and even if that wasn't how he did it, he has the capacity to wipe out the X-Men in a whole handful of ways. For starters, Apocalypse is what is called an external. These are beings, mostly mutants, who are immortal, share a psychic connection, and who can revive themselves. So he can just never be permanently taken down, and he has been around for about 5,000 years. Apocalypse's original mutant ability was to be able to control his own molecular structure, but over time, with the mentality of survival of the fittest, he has enhanced his abilities and even gained new ones through the use of celestial technology, celestial armor, and at least 2 techno-organic viruses. He can do a lot with his molecular manipulation, including heal himself and turn his limbs into simple melee weapons, but also technologically complex weapons like plasma cannons. But I think the most impressive thing he can do is consciously and subconsciously grant himself a huge amount of mutant powers at will. That makes him too much for most heroes to handle already, and we haven't even talked about his celestial energy manipulation, his psionic abilities, or any of his countless horsemen of the apocalypse, all of whom were given power boosts by this unstoppable mutant. Number 7. The Thing. Ben Grimm's first year roommate in university just happened to be this brilliant young scientist by the name of Reed Richards. These two became best friends. After the two graduated, Ben joined the Air Force, becoming a pilot and an astronaut. Now, helping out his buddy Reed with the prototype spaceship, Ben volunteered as its pilot. And alongside Reed, Susan Storm and her brother Johnny Storm, the four were bombarded with radiation and they all gained superpowers. Of all of them though, Ben drew the short end of the stick, with his skin becoming orange and rocky, turning him into an extremely durable and extremely strong monstrous thing. On the other hand though, Ben was now the only member of the Fantastic Four who gained immortality, being unable to age at all. Eventually, thanks to Johnny Storm, the Thing did get the ability to return back to his human form, but only once a year. This is the only time that he actually ages, and it's only by 1 day every year. If he chooses not to become human that year, then he does not age 1 day. Basically, the Thing will live for a very long time, if not just forever. Number 6. The Hulk. The gamma-powered green Goliath known as the Hulk has been around for a long time, and ever since he showed up there are only a small handful of people who have ever been able to stop him without using some kind of magic or reality warping. His infinite strength has a lot to do with that, a strength that grows based on his anger and has never ever really reached a cap, allowing him to destroy entire planets, be a threat to the entire galaxies, and being able to shake the entire multiverse with his punches. It also has a lot to do with his basically limitless dynamic durability, which has allowed him to survive attacks from enchanted weapons, powerful blasts of energy, stronger than ground zero nuclear explosions, the Human Torch's Nova Blast, and he could stand up to forces that could crush adamantium and destroy entire planets. We already knew that the Hulk persona would come out to stop Bruce Banner from ever passing on, and that the Hulk himself is practically unable to be damaged and heals very quickly if he is, but now, thanks to Immortal Hulk, we know that the Hulk actually, literally, cannot cease to live, coming back from the below place through green doors anytime he does happen to just bite the dust, which is never. Number 5. Ares. As the son of both Zeus and Hera, Ares is the Olympian god of war. Now, unlike a lot of others on this list, Ares has acted as a villain from time to time, which you would expect from a god of war. He's tried to conquer Olympus several times, usually being stopped by his half-brother, who we will talk about in just a moment. Now, growing tired of Zeus's rule, Ares retired from his position in Olympus and made his way to Earth to raise his son Alexander, aka Phobos, who is also immortal. His first real heroic Marvel moment came when he returned to Olympus to face Amatsu Mikobashi, the Chaos King. Since then, he has actually joined up as one of Iron Man's Avengers, even staying on the team when Norman Osborn took over. Eventually though, he kind of passed away at the hands of the Sentry, who ripped him in half, but he just went straight to Elysium, only to return as a fighter in the Contest of Champions, and after that, he went back to Earth and became one of the champions of Europe. Somehow though, he was taken out by the Punisher fairly recently, but he will probably absolutely return, as he is a god. Number 4. Hercules. Hercules is the son of Zeus, Skyfather and supreme ruler of the gods of Olympus, and Alcmena, a mortal woman who lived over 3,000 years ago. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, arranged for her father Zeus to have a half-mortal son to be the world's champion. Zeus seduced Queen Alcmena, pretending to be her husband, King Amphitryon, and Alcmena gave birth to baby Hercules. Now, as an adult demigod in ancient Greece, Hercules achieved worldwide fame, best known for his 12 labors. As the Olympian god of strength, Hercules' strength is unlimited, making him one of the strongest and most powerful heroes in the Marvel Universe. As an infant, he was breastfed by his stepmother, Hera, queen of the Olympian gods, which increased his already demigod physiology to godlike levels. Hercules possesses the superhuman physical attributes of an Olympian god, but interestingly, some of his powers are superior to the vast majority of his race. But like all of them, he's immortal. Number 3. Snowbird. Narya's origins trace back to ancient times when the Inuit gods of the north battled the mystical great beasts for the fate of the world. Ultimately, both parties were exiled from Earth, and as such, the Inuit gods sought to create an agent to prevent the beast's return. To that end, Nelvana, goddess of the northern lights, mated with a human. With the midwifery assistance of Sarsi mystic Michael Two Young Men, Nelvana gave birth to a daughter, Narya. Two young men bound the infant to the lands of Canada, allowing her to assume human form. However, she would weaken if she left Canada's borders. Two young men raised the rapidly maturing Narya as his own daughter, and both were soon recruited into Alpha Flight as Shaman and Snowbird. And Snowbird, being a god, like Hercules, is immortal. Number 2. Monkey King. A crime lord self-styled himself as a modern-day, quote, Monkey King. He was tricked by a rival into attempting to steal the original Monkey King's staff. Now, in the cave where the staff was held, he encountered the spirit of the original Monkey King, Sung Wukong, who, impressed by his audacity, let him take the staff and at least some of the original's power on the condition that he would be judged. If he was good, he would be allowed to go free, but if his heart was weighed down by evil, he would be cast down into the 8th city of hell. Now, being a crime lord, he was judged evil. He was cast down where he was trapped for years and years and years until one of the hammers of the worthy that was created during the original sin created a hole that allowed many demons, including himself, to escape. Having seen the error of his ways, he now dedicated himself to trying to atone for his past deeds and hunting down any other demons that also escaped alongside him, with the powers of immortality. Number 1. Deadpool. With powers originating from Wolverine's genetic mutation, only stronger, Wade Wilson, aka Deadpool, is a product of the Weapon X program, making him not only pretty difficult to take down, but also pretty difficult to defend against. But through his time, he's managed to become even more capable. At one point in the comics, Deadpool becomes infatuated with Death, as in Mistress Death. This is the same Death that the Mad Titan Thanos is also in love with. Now, because of this little weird love triangle and Thanos being a big grumpy jealous boy, he decides to quote gift old Wade Wilson with immortality, meaning preventing him from ever being able to fully be with Death. In reality, he just vowed to return Deadpool to life no matter what it took if he ever managed to actually pass away. Coming from Thanos, that's pretty much the same as immortality, because Thanos is Thanos and he will do whatever he wants to do. But even without that, Deadpool's healing factor renders him basically immortal as he no longer ages, can live and control his body without his head attached, is highly resistant to foreign chemicals, immune to all diseases, telepathic attacks, and possessions. He's a master assassin and has the power of breaking the fourth wall, which in a way gives him almost godhood-like abilities in comic books.
Number 10. Yara Flor. Yara Flor is destined to become the new Wonder Woman. At least that is what Future State would have us believe. For now though, in the Prime Earth continuity, she is just coming into her own and being introduced to us as a hero, figuring out as well what that means for her as our Wonder Girl. Yara herself, like Wonder Woman before her, is also a demigod. In Future State we learned that while her mother was a mortal woman, her father was a Brazilian river god. Yara is an Amazonian in two ways, being from the Amazon and also being an Amazon of the Amazons. She is not from Themyscira like Diana, but instead from the Amazonian rainforest. We've seen the potential of Yara via her appearance in Future State, but currently she is not at her full power levels just yet, as she doesn't have the same amount of experience as her future self. Like Diana, she is also a skilled combatant and has enhanced strength and speed due to her heritage. Number 9. Beta Ray Bill. Beta Ray Bill isn't someone you'd initially think of when you think of Immortal, but he is down with the Immortals of Asgard, and so I think we can include him too. Also add in the fact that he is a cyborg, and you have a Beta Ray Bill that just won't quit. In most cases at least. In his Thor form, Beta Ray Bill becomes one of the toughest heroes around, not only known for his strength but also his durability. He is immune to disease and sickness and becomes pretty much immortal in that form. Being at the level of strength and capability when it comes to his power levels also makes him one of the most powerful heroes in the Marvel Universe, even though he might not be the one that you think of first. Still, I'm really happy I put Beta Ray Bill on this list because I feel like we never talk about him enough. Poor Bill. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, I have a lot more immortal, powerful heroes that I want to tell you about. So be sure to let us know you are loving it by giving this video a thumbs up. And shout out in the comments, be like part 2, part 2. Maybe we'll do a part 2. Number 8. Orion. Orion is one of the new gods and also the son of Darkseid. But just because his dad is one of the greatest villains of all time when it comes to the DC universe doesn't mean that he can't be a hero, which is ultimately what Orion is, preferring to fight on the side of good. Although this doesn't mean that he never has conflicts with other superheroes in the DC universe, because that does happen from time to time, with Orion arguing that his approach to heroism in certain cases is superior. Orion is an amazingly skilled fighter and leader who is known for his super strength, durability, and stamina. He also is immortal like his father, and because Darkseid has also been established as a constant in the DC universe, therefore invulnerable from ever being permanently defeated, we can discern that Orion likely has a similar thing going on, being descended from Darkseid as he is.
Number 7. Maestro. The Incredible Hulk has certainly been through the ringer in his decorated career, but few versions of the character are the living embodiment of that fact like the Maestro. An alternate version of Bruce Banner from an apocalyptic future, the Maestro is far more intense and complex than his Earth 616 counterpart. The best way to describe Maestro is to say that he is basically a smarter, older, villainous version of Dr. Bruce Banner with all the powers and abilities of the original but with a touch more nuclear radiation. Now I don't know if you know, but the Hulk is actually immortal. As a gamma mutate with a connection to the below place, Bruce Banner and Hulk learned he possessed the ability to commandeer his own recovery rate. One time Hulk had been pulled apart and put into several different jars, only to literally compel his own body to come back together by sheer force of will. The Hulk, and by extension Maestro, is capable of regenerating damaged or destroyed areas of his entire body with much greater speed and efficiency than any of us can do. The Hulk was also able to systematically regenerate his internal organs and tissues, and was also able to literally rip off a large fraction of his own head, allowing it to completely regrow. The Maestro himself was able to molecularly rebuild his own body after being atomized. The Hulk has survived to be the only living human being left on the entire Earth in Hulk the End, so immortality for this guy is a big old checkmark. Number 6. Agatha Harkness. Like a few of these villains, when we first met Agatha Harkness in Fantastic Four number 95 from October 1969, she was already elderly. She started out as the nanny for the newly born Franklin Richards, and using her magical powers, she even saved the Fantastic Four from the Frightful Four, a handful of other villains, and also helped Franklin when his powers first started to emerge. But she went on to have an interesting relationship with the Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff, but also her mother Natalia Maximoff. That's because this sweet nanny, Agatha, is actually an incredibly ancient sorcerer who was around to remember the sinking of Atlantis nearly 18,500 years ago. And she was probably the most powerful of the original witches during the Salem witch trials, an event that she actually supported as she thought it would cull the weak magic users who held them all collectively back. While Agatha is not technically immortal, her use of magic coupled with her extended lifespan has made her basically the same thing. Number 5. Kang the Conqueror. Kang is a little bit of an interesting pick for this list, as he totally can be stopped and has been multiple times. Thanks to the advanced time period he comes from, Nathaniel Richards has an increased lifespan, making him look like 40 years old when he's actually 70 years old. That's fine, that doesn't make him unstoppable or immortal. What makes him immortal is a couple of things. For starters, as most people know, Kang has a huge relationship with time. A version of this guy exists at almost all moments of the time stream, and not just one version of him, as there have been Kangs from different universes that have shown up as well. So not only can Nathaniel Richards show up at any point in the time stream in any of his numerous identities that all have their own long history, but his alternate universe versions are almost always set to make an appearance in his place. And then, on top of that, until recently, Nathaniel had the ability to transfer his consciousness to another body whenever he did actually pass away. So, yeah, he's kind of immortal. Number 4. That Which Endures. That Which Endures is basically like a bacteria. All the way back at the very beginning of life, billions of years ago, when the first cells split on Earth and multicellular life forms began to exist, That Which Endures attached itself to the resulting organism and has been multiplying and sticking with whatever species it determined was the most dominant in order to ensure its own survival. It basically chooses which species are successful, and a small part of it exists in every member of that species. At first, that was dinosaurs, and then eventually humans. Around every 100,000 years, That Which Endures will just pop up in a large number of that species, look around, and see if any other species is beginning to come out on top, which is when it would jump ship to that new species. When it did this in Avengers West Coast number 47 in 1989, it noticed that there was a super cool and powerful evolution in Homo sapiens known as Homo superior, aka the mutants. That Which Endures chose the Scarlet Witch as the first mutant it would try to jump to, using her to destroy Homo sapiens. Luckily though, the Great Lakes Initiative alongside Vision were able to stop this from happening, and we haven't really heard anything of this semi-sentient organism ever since. Number 3. The Beast. The ninja clan known as the Hand has had many run-ins with different heroes over the years, but none of those heroes have had as much interaction with the shadowy group as Daredevil. His mentor, Stick, and his sometimes girlfriend, Elektra, have history with the clan as well, and he's never been particularly fond of them. But when he seemed to secure control over the clan, he decided to put their skills to good use. He moved them to Hell's Kitchen and started up a headquarters and prison known as Shadowland. He changed the Hand into what he thought was a force for good, but as his time with the Hand went on, he seemed to be the one who was changing, becoming more aggressive and drastic with his methods of crime fighting. He started to butt heads with other heroes and even became responsible for the passing of his adversary, Bullseye, again. Now it turns out that this brutal new Daredevil was actually being possessed by an ancient demon called the Beast, who is the source of the Hand's mystical powers and has been the reason the clan was as morally dubious as it is. Daredevil was secretly manipulated by the Snake Root, a small faction of the Hand that worshipped the Beast. They manipulated Daredevil into undergoing the ritual of the Black Flower. So when Daredevil removed the problem of Bullseye from existence, it completed the ritual and the Beast possessed him and corrupted the people of Hell's Kitchen until Iron Fist exorcised the demon from that. Number 2. Uranos. As you might be able to gather from their name, Eternals are, well, eternal, meaning they are immortal, and some of them are scary powerful. The Eternal known as Uranos first ever appeared in Marvel What If number 24 in September of 1980, in a story that explained the origins of the Eternals. In this story, Uranos is trying to convince his brother, Kronos, that the Eternals should use their massive amounts of power to just take over the world. He believed the Eternals would best fulfill their duties if they exterminated both the deviants and the humans on Earth, all life outside the universe as well, and imprison the Celestials, but his brothers, Kronos and Oceanus, luckily disagreed, sparking the Eternals' civil war. The war culminated in his defeat and banishment to the planet Uranus. Surprise though, this isn't what actually happened. The Uranos who was banished to another planet was actually a clone of the real Uranos who was banished to the exclusion, as he tied his own passing to the destruction of Earth, meaning if he goes, we all go. Which is why he was sent to the exclusion, only able to leave an hour at a time at the discretion of the Prime Eternal. Most recently, Uranos was used by Druig to wipe out a massive amount of the mutant population when a war between the Eternals and the mutants broke out. And finally, in at number 1 today is Shadow King. Amal Farouk was a pretty nasty mutant that Charles Xavier had a run-in with in Cairo way back in the day before he started the X-Men. Amal attacked Xavier and then tried to convince Charles to partner with him in his nefarious ways. Luckily, Charles refused, challenged Farouk to a psychic duel, and won, which seemed to take Farouk's life, and he moved on to create the X-Men in order to combat evil mutants in the world like Farouk himself. What no one knew until about 150 issues later is that Farouk was actually merged with a multiversal manifestation of the dark side of human consciousness who had been possessing various individuals since the dawn of human history, called the Shadow King. Years and years later, the Shadow King and Farouk, who had been floating around in the astral plane, made a move to attack Xavier again, taking over the new mutant Karma due to her own mutant ability of possession, making her vulnerable. He was eventually defeated, but this multiversal entity would go on to possess a whole number of powerful people, mainly telepaths like Marvel Girl and Psylocke, whose energy the Shadow King would feed off of. But there have been many others who have been possessed, corrupted, and misled by this powerful telepathic entity in not only the 616 universe, but all over the multiverse. Number 10. Brainiac. The Collector of Worlds, kinda like those weirdos who collect snow globes. Brainiac is considered one of Superman's stronger and actually not boring foes. Brainiac's level of intellect supersedes humans by several centuries of advanced knowledge. He's so smart that his intelligence actually creates his other powers, if that even makes sense. For example, he can interconnect his consciousness with other computer systems, possess other beings, and even transfer knowledge and information to himself from others. The original Brainiac's purpose was to capture cities and assimilate knowledge in order to gain power. Part of his operating procedure is collecting civilizations for study and preserving his knowledge of alien species so that he remains the most supreme being in the universe, and then destroying planets and galaxies in his wake to prevent the knowledge from spreading. Thanks to Brainiac's mechanical body, he is immune to aging, with his exact age never being specified, but he was alive long before Krypton's destruction, making him several thousand years old at the least, and he has the ability to recover himself as long as a single line of his DNA remains. Number 9. Granny Goodness. Granny Goodness is probably the complete opposite of anything we would describe as goodness. She was originally one of the lowlies, basically the peasant class on Apocalypse. From a younger age, she was taken by Darkseid and raised and trained to become head of the Shock Troops and of the Female Furies. She has the responsibility to bring young warriors from other worlds to fight each other to earn the right to be trained by her. But Granny Goodness also has multiple orphanages where she both trains and disciplines younger individuals looking for potential warriors for Darkseid. Being a resident of Apocalypse, Granny here does have quite a bit of power. She has superhuman strength, speed, durability, and senses, as well as invulnerability, an advanced immune system, and yes, that's right, immortality. But being immortal doesn't necessarily save you from looking old as hell, which is why we get Granny Goodness. Number 8. Vandal Savage. When you think of intelligence, you don't often think of cavemen, but there is one caveman who can proudly make this list. Vandal Savage was alive 50,000 years ago as chief of a tribe of other cavemen, but when he came into contact with a strange meteorite, it exploded and bathed him in this strange alien radiation that gave him immunity to aging, disease, and fatigue, meaning he is effectively immortal. The meteorite also increased his intelligence to superhuman levels, which combined with 50,000 years of learning, experiencing, and living alongside every single technological innovation in the history of man ever, Vandal Savage possesses skills in almost all areas of the human experience, even basically becoming immune to pain. Specifically though, he focuses on the tactical skills that would help him become a world conqueror. Because he's a villain, that's what happens.
Number 7, Icarus. I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention one Eternal on this list. Eternals are known for their immortality. I mean, it's kinda in the name. Eternal. We call them eternal because they are. They have lived on Earth for 1 million years at this point or more, Icarus included. They are beings who were created by the Celestials, but whose purpose remained a great mystery in the comics for a long time. Initially though, it seemed that the Celestials had created them to kind of be Earth's heroes, but also because they kind of enjoyed messing with species on other worlds, which was exactly what they were doing with humanity when they created both the Eternals and their initial sworn enemies, the Deviants. Icarus, like himself, is often thought of as being the Superman equivalent of the group. Icarus is well known for his durability, strength, flight, and energy manipulation and energy beams, including heat vision as a form of. Icarus is strong enough to take on Thanos one-on-one and also possesses the ability to heal himself. Like other Eternals, he also has the capability to teleport, though he actually prefers not to do that, and he possesses low-level psionic abilities that allow him to communicate telepathically, as well as more advanced telekinetic abilities. Number 6, Supergirl. Like her cousin Kal-El, Supergirl is often perceived as being basically immortal. In Future State, we saw an alternate future where Kara left Earth and lived well into the future. At the end of her Future State limited series, Kara Zor-El Superwoman, Supergirl did inevitably die, but we don't really know what from. It could have eventually been that she succumbed to old age after living well into the future and beyond, or it could be that she died protecting the Eternal Garden and community there that she created and had fostered. I would err on the side of the latter just because of how immortal Kara already seemed in that series. And that's not the only alternate reality where we've seen Kryptonians living well into the future, virtually untouched by age. There have been countless other realities, including that of DC 1 million, where we've seen heroes like Superman live well beyond normal years, becoming basically a sun-powered god. So if this is true for Clark based on his physiology, it must also be a possibility for Kara as well. Number 5, Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman is still a woman that can be killed, but she has also been known as a demigod in the comics before, with one origin for her making her the daughter of Hippolyta, the Queen of Amazons, and Zeus, a god of Olympus. Really, the god of Olympus. More recently, during the events of Dark Knight's death metal, Diana was also raised up to become an omnipotent god amidst the stars, transcended into an otherworldly being and leaving our earthly plane behind, at least for a while. Diana would get a glimpse into a potential future, giving us the Future State line, world, and event. Wonder Woman is known for being one of the fiercest and strongest fighters amongst the Amazons and in the world of DC besides. Number 4, Cersei. Probably one of the most powerful Eternals around, and definitely one of the few with the greatest staying power in the comics, is Cersei. So she's not only immortal as an Eternal, but also immortal in terms of her appearance in the comics. Cersei is introduced to us as one of the members of the Eternals who most loves humanity in the MCU film Eternals, and the same can be said for her in the comics. There she is also known as one of the most sociable Eternals, who also appreciates a really good party. In fact, when she was tricked into believing she was human, this was kind of what her whole world centered around. She became like all about parties. When it comes to her power levels, Cersei is often seen as specializing in the power of transmutation. In the comics, this has never been restricted to non-organic matter either, and also gives Cersei the power to heal. As an Eternal, she not only possesses this power, but also has complete control over every molecule of her being, making her quite durable and quite hard to kill. Even when Eternals are killed as well, they're resurrected, meaning they can never really die. Not only that, but Cersei can fly, teleport, and has super strength, and is telepathic and telekinetic. She's really got a lot of powers. Like most Eternals. That is something that I feel like we didn't really see in the movie, but in the comics, they're all pretty OP. Number 3, Hulk. Hulk is definitely one of the most powerful heroes around in Marvel Comics. Often he is well known for his massive amount of strength and ability to smash or destroy just about anything he sets his mind to wrecking. Lately, however, we saw a deep dive into the character of the Hulk and Bruce Banner, who are also often described as being two separate beings kind of sharing one existence. In Immortal Hulk, we also learn not only that Hulk is extremely complex, but also that he's, well, you may have guessed it, immortal. Granted, this very revelation was something pulled from his original origin, where it was initially explained that at night the Hulk would basically take over, and because of this, whenever night fell, if Bruce Banner had been killed, then Hulk would be resurrected, bringing Bruce back with him. If you are a Hulk fan and you haven't yet read Immortal Hulk, by the way, it's definitely a must read, so go do that. And you'll see what I'm talking about with all this Immortal stuff. If you didn't already know, because I feel like, you know, if you've been a Hulk fan for a long time, then you probably were like, I mean, it makes sense. Number 2, Jean Grey. Jean has died a lot, and I mean a lot, and yet she always comes back. If that isn't immortality, I do not know what is. Even when she has been dead for years, she still returns. A big part of what makes her so indestructible is how much the Phoenix Force loves her and often sees her as its preferred host. I guess except for the whole Phoenix tournament thing, that really threw my whole understanding of the Jean-Phoenix connection for a loop. As a superhero, Jean is one of the most powerful around, but often chooses to show restraint when it comes to her abilities unless she is really needed to set things right. She's just kinda too OP as well. She is an Omega level telepath and an extremely powerful telekinetic. Number 1, Superman. One of the most immortal of the immortals out there, and one of the most powerful is Superman, who has been established as immortal as long as he's under a yellow sun. Granted, his immortality is a little bit conditional, but when it comes to being a powerhouse, Superman is undisputedly one of the best and most established in comics today. I mean, they kinda had to nail down his powers and give him weaknesses to make his struggles more grounded. That's how unstoppable he initially was, back when his superpowers were basically whatever he needed them to be in order to save the day and solve problems. Superman has also died before, but has pretty much always come back, and following the death of Superman, we also learned that due to Kryptonian technology, even this publicized and sensationalized death would most definitely not be a permanent thing. A very powerful factor that Superman also possesses when it comes to his immortality is how popular he is, evidently. So it'd be really hard to kill Superman because we'd all be like, no! No one would accept it. We'd all be like just tearing our hair out and beating our chest. We'd be like, unacceptable.
Coming in at number 10 today is Mr. Immortal. What better way to start off a list of immortal heroes? Mr. Immortal possesses the ability to automatically resurrect and heal from any fatality that he ever suffers. The resurrection usually occurs immediately, and it appears that it stopped him from aging completely. He has recovered from being blasted, squished, losing air to his lungs, being crushed, blown up, infected, losing his head, blasted by radiation, and incinerated. The Death Urge, who Mr. Immortal grew up with, has stated that Mr. Immortal is fated to be alive to see the end of the universe, eventually being the sole survivor of the universe. Then, at the end, he would learn the quote, grand secret that will reveal itself at the end of all things. It's later revealed that this grand secret is merging with the sentience of the cosmos, surviving beyond the end of time, and moving on into the next iteration of everything, just like Galactus does. Franklin Richards is also said to have this same destiny, but according to the one below all, Franklin is the quote appointed prince, and Mr. Mortal is merely Franklin's backup, just in case Franklin happens to pass away. Number 9, the Eternals. Way back in the day, the Celestials came to Earth when proto-humans began to emerge, meaning around 2 to 5 million years ago. That's a long frickin' time. The Celestial first host performed genetic experiments on those early humans, resulting in 3 groups: the immortal and superior Eternals, the pretty grotesque and monstrous deviants, and just plain Jane regular humans like you and me. The Eternals, aka Homo Immortalis, were basically created to defend the planet Earth, specifically from the deviants, and to serve the Celestials. They became somewhat silent defenders of Homo sapiens, secluding themselves and rarely directly engaging with us. They built super impressive cities like Olympia, Titanos, Oceania, and Polaria, and their names have become intertwined with heroes throughout ancient history, and they are all immortal, being reborn if they ever actually bite the dust, hence the Homo Immortalis name. An average Eternal is intertwined with cosmic energy and can lift about 15 tons without using any form of telekinesis, but a few are able to lift up to 100 tons. Other Eternals specialize in different powers like telepathy and telekinesis, and all Eternals have the ability to join with one another to form the Unimind made of light, mind and just pure energy. Number 8. Nightcrawler. Kurt Wagner was first introduced in Giant-Sized X-Men number 1 in April 1975 with the mutant ability to biophysically displace himself into the Brimstone dimension, travel through it with a subconscious sense, and then return back to our dimension in a different location. Essentially, teleporting. Now this all happens so fast it's almost instant, and it's always accompanied by the signature BAMF sound. Through his unique physiology, he gains a few extra abilities as well, like a prehensile tail, microsuction hands and feet, flexible bone structure, and he can also camouflage himself, bending light using the Brimstone dimension. But what a few might not know is that he is actually immortal, thanks to the fact that he sacrificed his soul in heaven to come back to life. This means he cannot be taken out by any natural means, and if he was taken out by anything else, the mutant resurrection protocols got him covered too, which is good because I never want to lose this legendary blue mutant.
Number 7, we've got Anti-Monitor. Yes, this villain appears a lot on these powerful villains super lists, but I couldn't ignore him on this one even if I tried. His influence in the comics is immense, but what places him in this list is primarily his near infinite age. This guy was born in the early days of the cosmos, lived for over 9 billion years in a dormant state, and even fought a battle with his counterpart, Monitor, for 1,000,000 years. It's hard enough for most beings to live that long, let alone be in a constant battle the whole time. And on top of all this, he's also just proven to be nearly impossible to kill. Even when he's vanquished for good, he isn't really killed, but instead broken up into molecules and scattered through the universe. And he had to be punched into a star to make that happen, by Superman from Earth 2, with the help of Darkseid, Superboy Prime, Dr. Light, and heroic Lex Luthor. So I'd argue that Anti-Monitor definitely deserves a spot on this list. Number 6 on our list goes to the one and only Kang the Conqueror. This villain is so powerful that he's able to change the course of history with little to no effort. His ability to traverse through time gives him supreme insight and also the capability to appear in any time in the history of our universe, future, past, and present. He's a real contender for this list because although he's been defeated in the past, he was really only in a state of limbo, and he never truly meets a final end. I mean, he's able to not only design the outcome of reality in most cases, but also just exist in any time he'd like. He once lived in ancient Egypt, and also the turn of the 20th century. The point is, Kang shows time and time again that he's capable of existing in multiple times throughout history, which I would argue could be a form of immortality. As Schrodinger's logic would go, Kang has and hasn't existed at every moment in history and the future. It would just be up to us to observe him, and well, good luck with that. Alright, at number 5, I'm putting Dormammu. Am I pronouncing that right? Another villain who's been around for countless millennia, possibly even millions of years. Dormammu proves to be powerful enough and durable enough to possibly be considered immortal. One piece of evidence is his clash with Agamotto, a spawn of one of the elder gods where Dormammu actually held his own. And for those of you who don't know, Agamotto easily contended against Galactus himself. And if that wasn't enough to suggest Dormammu's potential for immortality, he's also immune to aging and harm of any kind, physical or mystical. His powers have also been used for resurrection in the past, so it's fair to say that stopping this guy will be tough, and arguably won't be permanent in any case. Okay, at number 4, we're looking at Searcher, the 1,000-foot tall fire giant who can move stuff with his mind. Searcher was the sworn enemy of Odin and Thor and eventually destroys Asgard. At a few points, Searcher is imprisoned and banished, but never completely destroyed. Even after one of these instances where Searcher was transported to the Sea of Eternal Light and frozen for all time, he still re-emerges after a Norwegian guy named Sven finds a medallion with connections to Searcher, and subsequently turns into him. Thank you so much, Sven. And once again, when he's finally defeated by the Asgardians, he isn't really, since he just finds himself resurrected in a realm called Muspelheim. There's one instance where he's then beheaded by the Twilight Sword, another where he's basically destroyed by Odin who steals the Eternal Flame from him, but based on his track record, I'm not buying that any of these instances are the last of him. We're in the top 3, folks, and at number 3 we have none other than Thanos. I know, yes, in the movies he was beheaded, but many argue that this isn't the end of him. Thanos is an ancient Eternal who was born on the planet Titan to his father Alars, also an Eternal. So, this dates Thanos back about 1,000,000 years. And Thanos himself is an Eternal, meaning we can at least deduct that he's immune to all disease and aging. In fact, Thanos was specifically banned by death from his realm, meaning it's almost confirmed that he can't be killed. So yeah, in the movie, spoiler alert, should have said that by now, we all saw him die. But by the laws of this character's storyline, this won't be the last we see of Thanos, no matter how severe the injury appears to be. Number 2, we've got the insatiable Galactus. This bad guy is hardly a villain anymore and more like a floating entity that feeds on the energy of life forms. Interdimensional and one of the oldest known beings to ever exist, Galactus always finds a way to bring evil to the cosmos. Even in his apparent death, he was replaced by Abraxas, who basically took over in his absence. As much as Galactus is able to endure, and despite his nearly infinite age, there are instances where he's weakened and put into submissive positions by other forces in the cosmos. The closest he comes to truly dying is when Thor and Galactus' attempted assault on the Black Winter goes horribly wrong and Thor turns on him, leaving him on the brink of death. A little too late, I'd say, considering you just let him consume 5 planets, Thor, but also good on you for killing Galactus sooner or later. But does Galactus ever die? Not really. Let's just hope that Abraxas doesn't come back again while he's gone. We don't want that. That guy's no good either. At number 1, we have the Goblin Entity. This being was created at the point of the Big Bang, so one of the oldest on our list for sure. That said, the power of this villain has sustained over billions of years, and just like Galactus, it is driven by its insatiable hunger for energy. It's basically a giant, dark entity that moves through the cosmos, ingesting everything in its way. It is confirmed that the Goblin Entity cannot die, and if it were to be killed, similarly to everyone else on this list, it would find a way to regenerate. It seems what we're dealing with in this top 10 is a group of villains that just won't stop, no matter how hard you try to defeat them. But perhaps by exploring the villains with potential immortality, we're also exploring the deepest depths of true metaphorical evil found in the DC and Marvel universes, in that in the real world as well, evil does always find its way back into the world, and all that can be done about it is temporary. Although those moments are sweet, where good wins, it's not long before we have to prepare for evil to return and rear its ugly head again.
Number 10, Orion. Orion is one of the new gods and also the son of Darkseid. But just because his dad is one of the greatest villains of all time when it comes to the DC universe, doesn't mean that he can't be a hero, which is ultimately what Orion is, preferring to fight on the side of good. However, even being a hero, that doesn't mean that he never has conflicts with other superheroes in the DC universe, because that does also happen from time to time, with Orion arguing that his approach to heroism in certain cases is superior. Orion is an amazingly skilled fighter who is known for his super strength, durability, and stamina. He also is immortal like his father, and because Darkseid has also been established as a constant in the DC universe, therefore invulnerable from ever being permanently defeated and erased, we can discern that Orion likely has a similar thing going on, being at least somewhat inevitable, kind of by proxy. It's not confirmed, it's a theory, but just go with it. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to show us you love us by clicking that like. Number 9, Green Lantern. In the Kingdom Come universe of Earth 22, Green Lantern, Alan Scott, actually found a way to integrate his own lantern into his armor, making him even more powerful than before. In the world of Kingdom Come, he looks like a massive green knight. Although he looks terrifying, he's meant to be one of the good guys, and after waiting years for an alien threat that never appears, he joins the Justice League. Alan Scott in this universe also possesses the ability of immortality, among others, although as intimidating as this immortal and immensely powerful version of the hero is, I'd also like to remind you that he still has his weakness to wood in this universe. In fact, if the constructs he creates come into contact with wood, they apparently just are destroyed. Number 8, the Spectre. The Spectre is an often ominous presence who holds so much power that he usually stays on the periphery, not really getting involved in major plot points unless there is a crisis that's so large that it demands he interfere. He is a bringer of justice, and even to this day, there are tons of comics featuring the Spectre where his identity has never been revealed. The Spectre has also been posed as a sort of mantle that can be passed on, almost like a constant role that must always be filled, so sometimes we do know who he is, making the title itself alone immortal in a fashion.
In at 7, Supergirl. Last part, Josh talked about how Superman was basically unkillable ever since the death of Superman comic event, since he hadn't really been killed by Doomsday and instead was placed in Kryptonian stasis until he was able to be healed enough to return to being a superhero. However, the same thing can be said about Supergirl, okay? Kara Zor-El. Kal-El's older cousin who got sucked through a wormhole, making her quite a bit younger than her cousin when she got to Earth. Despite this, okay, Kal and Kara have the same Kryptonian ancestry, making them equals. So if Superman is basically unkillable at this point, so is Supergirl. It's just basic math, or like weird comic book genetics math. Since he equals her, they would both be deemed unkillable or immortal. And I think that that's fairly cut and dry. Like, obviously they can be killed, but so can basically everyone on this list, okay? So let's just cut the semantics and just like ignore the nuance. I just said that to a YouTube comments section. Wonder how effective that's gonna be. And at 6, Spider-Man. First officially referenced in 2005's official handbook of the Marvel Universe, Alternate Universes 2005 number 1, the sliding time scales is an attempt to quantify the passage of time in Earth 616 so that the characters don't age noticeably. Earth 616 featuring a sliding time scale means that rather than being fixed to any date in history, the modern era, which starts with the events of Fantastic Four number 1 and continues to the present, continuously slides forward in time. This period is roughly 13 years, which means that at any time in the present, the space flight that gave birth to the Fantastic Four always happened around 13-14 years ago, meaning that basically everyone in the Marvel Universe can't die of old age. Meaning that while stories like Spider-Man Reign, among others, take place in a time where Spider-Man is old, his main 616 version is pretty damn immortal, especially because he's Marvel's most popular superhero, which means that this man has like a death grip on Marvel so hard that they cannot physically let him go. Halfway through into number 5, Wonder Woman. The Dark Knight's death metal story wrapped up early 2021 with issue number 7. And in that issue, and the issue before, we see Wonder Woman at her most powerful, in a godlike form that's even more powerful than a god. As the comic book puts it, quote, "She has been a god before, but at this moment, she's more. At this point, she has ascended past godhood and can see all of time and all realities. She sees every Earth's timeline, and she faces off against the Batman who laughs in his most powerful form. This fight is so intense that they literally hit each other through time itself. Diana here is also charged with anti-crisis energy, a connective force that links all history and all lives as one story. Then, she moves on to become one of the hands that creates the multiverse going forward, with no walls and greater possibilities. So she aids in creating the future state story, which we see in the next issues, and that was seemingly the centerpiece of DC 2021. So Wonder Woman becoming a god and remaking the universe sounds pretty immortal if you ask me. And at 4, Mr. Fantastic. In addition to the whole sliding timescale thing, which actually starts with him, making him immortal as well, Reed Richards' abilities also make him quite powerful. Mr. Fantastic possesses the ability to convert the mass of his entire body into a highly malleable state at will, which is what allows him to stretch. However, this also gives him the ability to absorb bullets and make himself more dense, basically all the reasons why Elongated Man would be immortal like I explained earlier. But the reason Reed has a leg up on Ralph is because of his son. Franklin Richards is one of, if not the most powerful being in the entire Marvel universe, even as an infant boy. This guy came to the present from the future and made Galactus his herald. Yeah, this dude made Galactus his and Mr. Fantastic's kid being somehow the most overpowered thing in the universe, there's no way that he would let his father die. If he wanted to, he could just like blink and his father would be resurrected. That's some Omega level shit. Like, he is like a Zeta level mutant, okay? It's insane. There's no way that this guy is dying. There's no way his dad is dying. I'll save Franklin Richards though for another list because I'm gonna need more numbers if there is one. Getting close to the end in number 3, Batman. Batman is possibly immortal for the same reason that Spider-Man is, in a way. Well, at least like the whole popularity thing. Probably even more so because there is no way that they would kill off Batman in the main continuity. They may have other timelines or Earths where Batman dies, but never in the main continuity will they pull a move this big, okay? His plot armor is what makes him immortal. It doesn't matter if Batman has been a thing for over 80 years, he will always be young and immortal, at least in our world. And even if Bruce does die, someone takes over the Batman mantle, and people commonly see the one who takes over as the proper Batman, since the public doesn't know that Bruce being dead means that Batman is dead, but you know, whatever. Honestly, though, Batman would end up killing Death if the story needed it, and honestly, there would be no question in people's minds. They'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. In the comments of times Batman embarrassed his villains, everyone seems to agree with me that Batman's greatest power isn't his money or his courage, but instead the plot armor given to him because he's DC's biggest moneymaker. But ultimately, in at number 2, Sentry. Sentry is an absolute powerhouse, so it's no surprise that he's basically immortal, okay? Even like any threat this dude will take on. Sentry has even fought and beaten Ares, which is already impressive, but how he did it is even better. Sentry used to be a part of Norman Osborn's Avengers, who went to Asgard in an attempt to lay siege and claim it, because you know, it's Norman Osborn's Avengers. However, the Marvel version of the Greek god of war didn't like that idea, so after he learned of Osborn's intentions, he came down to kill the Green Goblin. But Ares did not anticipate the absolute powerhouse that is Sentry. Sentry's monster arms. He picked him up and tore him in half. Okay? Like, how the absolute living hell did this man tear a Greek god in half? He absolutely obliterated the god of war without breaking a sweat. And if that doesn't show you the sheer power of Sentry and how overpowered Marvel thinks that Superman is, then nothing will actually show you at this point. You're a lost cause. But yeah, I feel like that makes him immortal. And finally, and at number 1, The Flash. Technically speaking, the comic version of Barry Allen survived Crisis on Infinite Earths, despite everyone believing him to be dead, since he returned to the Speed Force after turning into the lightning bolt that gave him his powers to begin with. That's also an interesting story. But after transforming into pure lightning, traveling through time and space, and striking himself, Barry was sent back into the Speed Force, and later escapes and comes back into our world in the Flash Rebirth storyline. So technically, he survived the comic version of Crisis because he didn't die. Okay, he just transcended dimensions, which is a damn testament to how the Flash will never really die, okay? If he can have a very public and very impactful sacrifice to save literally all of reality and then just be brought back because he just went into the Speed Force like some sort of speedster Valhalla, it just makes me think that if any speedster dies, they'll just go into the Speed Force and then be able to be brought back. And in reality, every character is immortal if the writers want to bring them back for whatever reason. They will always find a way.